Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, dozens of people are still missing in South Africa after last weekend's deadly flooding around Durban. Troops are deployed to help in the relief effort, but with the death toll standing at least 443, hopes of finding survivors are fading. Also, French billionaire Vincent Bolloré may be packing up his logistics business in Africa, but his past cosy relationship with the Togolese government could mean he could face a criminal trial. And in DR Congo, villagers in Rutshuru have faced an exhausting year of violence. Despite the dangers of militia operating in the territory, many locals try to enjoy a few days of normality by celebrating Easter. But first, about 10,000 troops were deployed in South Africa on Monday to help restore power and water to the stricken South African city of Durban. They were also charged with helping search for those still missing after the devastating floods a week ago that cost at least 443 lives. On Monday evening, President Cyril Ramaphosa addressed the nation about his plans on how to move forward in addressing the crisis.
We will be responding to this disaster in 3 phases. First, we will focus on the immediate humanitarian relief, ensuring that all affected persons are safe and that their basic needs are met. Second, we will focus on stabilization and recovery, rehousing people who have lost homes, and restoring provision of services. And thirdly, we will focus on reconstruction and rebuilding.
Well, the damage caused by the downpours in KwaZulu-Natal amount to the worst natural disaster to ever affect South Africa. Our team on the ground report.
After a week of rescue operations, it's still raining in Inanda on the outskirts of Durban. Dozens of people are still missing. This is one of almost 200 rescue operations. The terrain is still very slippery. People have been asked to evacuate, and there is now no chance of finding anyone alive. Police dogs are used to find bodies that are buried in the mud.
I reckon the dogs need to go down first, identify, and then we know where we're taking it.
Kenneth Khumalo is a neighbor of the Magwazi family who was wiped out.
The house that was built here actually washed away by the landslide. The mother survived, the father passed on. The 2 kids, we're still looking for them, they're still missing.
The bodies of the children were never found. More than 400 people have died, many buried alive. Some blame the high death toll on poor infrastructure.
We came out and we saw the walls are moving down, and the wall was pushed the first house. We saw the house moving and the second house moved too.
Bridges collapsed and roads were swept away. Here it rained as much in one day as it normally would in 9 months. This engineer saw shipping containers being washed away.
They just got uplifted and they were floating down the freeway. I would say maybe about 7-8 kilometers that they washed down the bridge with the floods.
Rescue teams from across the country are on their way to assist local disaster relief efforts. The Premier of the province admitted that they need help.
We welcome the support from sister provinces. We are truly appreciative of this humanitarian assistance.
The cost of this natural disaster is still being calculated, but road damage alone is estimated at more than 200 million euros.
Look now at some news in brief. Marine diving teams have been working around the oil tanker that sank off the Tunisian coast over the weekend, sparking fears of an ecological disaster. The Equatorial Guinea flagged Zelo sank in the Gulf of Gabes and has settled on its side at a depth of almost 20 meters. 7 crew were rescued and engineers say they've detected no leaks. Tunisia says it will work with other nations that have offered to help it prevent any environmental damage. Mali's taken delivery of 2 more combat helicopters and surveillance radars from Russia. The ruling junta posted photographs of the gear being unloaded on the official Twitter account of the presidency on Monday, and in a statement said it was a sign of a fruitful partnership with the Russian state. Mali's been struggling to fight a jihadist campaign that's claimed thousands of lives. The ruling junta's relationship with the Kremlin, though, has fed into French forces and their European allies announcing their exit from the country. Islamist group Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for an attack on Somalia's parliament in Mogadishu. It came under mortar fire on Monday as the country's newly elected MPs were meeting for just the second time since taking office. No lawmakers were harmed, but several people were reportedly injured. Despite both countries being banned by FIFA over government interference, Kenya and Zimbabwe will be included in the 2023 Africa Cup of Nations qualifying draw on Tuesday. Zimbabwe government-funded sporting body drew the ire of FIFA by sacking National Football Association executives over issues including failing to account for public funds. Meanwhile, Kenyan sports ministry officials disbanded the National Football Federation after its president, Nick Mwenda, was charged with multiple counts of fraud. CAF have set a deadline of mid-May for the bans to be lifted, or the countries will be barred from taking part in the tournament. Now, earlier this year, French conglomerate Bolloré decided to pull out of the African logistics sector altogether. It was a major upset, as Bolloré had been a major player on the continent for several decades. That time, though, was not without controversy. In Togo, Vincent Bolloré's relationship with the government had come in for some fierce criticism, as our correspondents report.
Of Lomé in Togo and Conakry in Guinea are two of the most prized assets of the French billionaire Vincent Bolloré. They are also the source of his legal troubles. Last year, before the French Financial Prosecutor's Office, the industrialist, who's one of the richest men in France, admitted he had obtained control of the port by financing the 2010 presidential campaign of Faure Gnassingbé, the current Togolese head of state.
The Gnassingbé regime has been confiscating state power for 54 years. And this is not the fault of Vincent Bolloré. With their financial power, people like Vincent Bolloré consolidate the dictatorship.
By pleading guilty, Vincent Bolloré and two of his collaborators hoped to quickly close the case in return for a fine. The company won the case, but the individuals did not. So criminal trial is still on the cards. Two losing candidates from the 2010 Togolese presidential election have already filed a civil suit.
There are those who may have suffered harm as a result of this corruption of foreign public officials.
The Bolloré Group did not wish to answer our questions. The Togolese authorities that we contacted did not respond either. They say the Bolloré case is a French affair.
Faure Gnassingbé was personally involved. On 1,000 pages, his name is mentioned everywhere. We are concerned. We can't say that this is a Franco-French affair.
Renowned investigative journalist Ferdinand Ayité says business deals between the Togolese government and Vincent Bolloré went against the country's interests.
We know there's a lot of tax evasion, money that's repatriated abroad, and that's what's truly revolting about the leaders of our countries. They sign contracts with investors to the detriment of the people. And one morning they say, I don't want to stay in your port anymore, I'm leaving. And all the profits I've made are for me. What did we gain? Absolutely nothing.
Bolloré is scheduled to hand over the Togolese port next year. It's unknown how much he made from his assets in Togo, but it's estimated that the overall transaction for the 40-plus African ports to MSC, the third ship owner in the world, is worth 5.7 billion euros.
In DR Congo, communities in Rutshuru have had an exhausting year, caught fighting between rebels and soldiers. Despite the danger and uncertainty, many tried to enjoy a few days of normality by celebrating Easter over the weekend. Laurent Berstacker has more.
A handful of worshippers were waiting to receive the Eucharist before joining the choir and bursting into song. They were taking part in the only Easter Mass held in the Jomba parish in eastern DRC's North Kivu province, a region still plagued by insecurity and violence.
The Mass went well, but there weren't many people. Most are still in shelters, even if a few have started to come back.
Last month, members of the M23 rebel group stormed and occupied several villages in eastern DRC before falling back to nearby hills. The fighting forced thousands of people to flee, with many seeking refuge in Rutshuru, a town ill-equipped to deal with the influx of refugees. A recent lull in the fighting has seen some families and residents start to return. Among them, Abbot Dimubanzi, who was rescued by security forces after he was caught up in the fighting.
We thank our parish priest who just came back. We thought he was dead. We had fled to Rutshuru and we just returned. We are happy to have seen our priest.
The Easter celebrations were a welcome change of pace for these villagers and continued throughout the weekend, even if some rites, including Saturday's traditional vigil, had to be cut short because of the volatile security situation.
And finally, 2 Kenyans have come out on top at the Boston Marathon. Evans Chebet pulled ahead of the men's lead pack on Monday to win his second shot at the race. Meanwhile, Kenya's Perez Jepchirchir, last year's Tokyo Olympic and New York Marathon champion, won her Boston Marathon debut in her 5th victory in a row since 2019. Congratulations to them both. Well, that is, though, all we have time for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us. Do so again if you can. Till then, take care.